Awesome. Again, so very high level, noting that all of the nitty gritty stuff is up on our website already, but a wee bit around what is Manawa. So it is a community activation fund that supports the provision of and access to play, active rec and sport opportunities for tamariki and rangatahi, with the emphasis on those that are missing out. So for those of you that are familiar with Kiwi sport in the past, you'll be aware that that was quite organised sport focused. Te Manawa is very much across play and active rec as well as sport, so it's been quite nice so far to receive a number of applications across a variety of activities, but also from a variety of groups as well, which has really been quite awesome for the panel to see. In terms of investment, we have just over 1.4, we started with just over 1.4 to give out through until mid-2021. So this is Sport NZ's fund. They come up with all the criteria and purpose, aims, priority groups, etc. And Sport Wellington, being the regional sports trust for our area, just administer the fund on their behalf. So that's our regional allocation that we have to give out, as I say, through until mid-2021. And for this first year, Sport NZ have identified those kind of three priority groups for this fund. So those being tamariki and rangatahi and whānau living in high-tech communities, disabled young people and girls and young women. And they've tagged on that 19 to 24-year-old age bracket for young women as well. And that's kind of come off the back of COVID. Sport NZ found through their data and insights, I guess, that group in particular were down on their physical activity levels. So they've included that group for at least this first year of this fund. So it is a new fund. It's only come online in August this year. It will be going for 4 years. But I guess given that it's the first year, they're kind of wanting to see how it goes over this first year. So at this stage, we can only fund up to 12-month initiatives. And just be wary that those high-level priority groups may change after that 12 months. They're going to do a review mid-2021. But we will, of course, communicate all of that stuff through our website and our comms and stuff like that. And again, as I touched on before, Te Manawa has a strong focus on quality experiences that will encourage participation for life. So again, Kiwi sport, those of you that were familiar with Kiwi sport in the past, it was quite participation driven. And we asked for a lot of metrics and KPIs around how many participants are going to be engaged, what's the opportunities, sessions, stuff like that. Te Manawa is really, because it's based in community, really focuses on quality experience, again, that removing barriers, so kind of kids can participate in sport for life. A wee bit of feedback on applications thus far. So far we've had one open funding round and one fast fund. So just briefly, as a wee bit of context, we're planning to have 3 open funding rounds in total from August when the fund went live through to mid next year. We've had our first one already. So the open fund is a minimum of $10,000 you can apply for. And they're typically open for around about a month or so in terms of the window. So our first one opened late August, and closed late September. So that those community decision-making panel, the community decision-making panel assesses those open funding round applications. So it's a mix of internal Sport Wellington staff as well as some external expertise. And those are coming from the likes of council. We've got one from a DHB, and they sit kind of across external Māori representation, disability rep, and we've got an active recreation rep as well, and some college Sport Wellington representation on that panel also. So those are the external expertise that make up the panel, along with some internal Sport Wellington staff. As far as a fast fund goes, for those of you that aren't aware, that's open year round and assessed on a monthly basis, and it's for applications up to 10,000. And the panel makeup for that is fully internal, and then we have Brian from College Sport Wellington as well, just giving that lens there as well. So those are I guess the two differences between the funds, but Reflecting on the first round of each, we've had one open funding round this far. As you can see, huge interest in this fund at the moment, and again, I just reiterate that this is more so around assisting you guys as much as possible with the quality of your applications and things to consider when including those in your applications, rather than, I guess, being a general interest kind of session for the fund. We had 63 applications through our open round. 63 applications in total, 37 open and 26 fires. And as you can see, over 2.5 million in total funding has been requested already, noting that again we have 1.4 to give out through until mid-2021. So lots of interest in the fund. And I guess that application makeup is split across play, active rec and sport, and that's the split there. So a lot in the sport and active rec side and a wee bit less in play. And I'll touch on it again shortly, but Sport NZ have asked all regional sports trusts for this first year of the fund at least to at least have a 20% split across play, active rec and sport in terms of the projects that we're funding. So we're trying to fund at least 20% in each of those areas. And again, that's total projects funded rather than the total allocation of investment. I guess as far as the results go, approximately 1/3 of the total investment amount has been allocated to date. So yeah, a third again of around about 1.4. The funded project split, so we've funded 3 across play, 5 active recreation and 9 in sport thus far. Again, those being across both the open fund and the fast fund. And I guess just from Sport Wellington perspective, we're aiming for a regional spread of the fund. So we're wanting this fund to get into all the different areas of the Greater Wellington region, including the Waiata Upper as well. So I guess areas of focus for us, or where there's been not so many applications thus far, but where we're keen to invest more, is Porirua and Wellington City South. So we're looking for a spread in those areas in particular moving forward. And I guess this is the key bit for me. So acknowledge there's a wee bit on here, and we'll break it down as we go through. But again, just some feedback on applications thus far and what people have kind of, I guess where the panel have seen some gaps, or just seen this as an opportunity to upskill you guys as potential applicants. So again, the play, active, recreation and sport funding split. Again, 20% of funding needs to go to each of those areas in terms of projects. And we've kind of made that clear right from the get-go, from when the fund came online. So I guess as a result, a lot of applicants have potentially written their application, but in your application form, you can select whether it fits under play, active, rec or sport. And I guess, and I don't know if it's with people bearing that in mind, that we can only fund 20 in each area, but potentially maybe ticking one of the ones that is not necessarily obvious in the hope that it might help them receive some funding. So just to let you guys know, as far as when the applications are assessed by the respective panels, the panel will assess them on the basis of where they see the application fitting. So please, when you're applying, ensure that you're ticking what you think is actually the most applicable from those 3, rather than what might help you with your funding chances, I guess. And I guess if you're stuck with that, there are definitions of each play, active, rec and sport in the community guidelines document for this fund. And again, that can be found on our website. So that's probably a good place to start in terms of definitions if you're stuck on what to classify your application as. Considerations for in-school delivery. So Pen will touch on this a wee bit more in his discussion, but I guess important to consider is a number of applicants have missed a vital step when submitting their applications for consideration in the first round, and that being the in-school delivery or KUTA form. So again, that's come online. It wasn't a requirement through Kiwi Sport previously, but it is through this Te Manawa Fund. For any delivery that is to occur in curriculum time, from an external provider. There just needs to be completion of a form, and ideally we're wanting the external provider to sit down with a representative from the school to complete that form. Again, it is on our website, and essentially it just talks to ensuring that there's consideration given to the school values, and that the school is being critical about that external deliverer coming in to deliver in curriculum time, rather than kind of the external deliverer just coming in and delivering and not having any alignment to the school values or the curriculum and anything like that. So where possible, what we've been doing so far is encouraging one of our Healthy Active Learning team members, which is Pem's team, to go and facilitate that conversation between the external provider and the school. And that can just be set up through me. So if you're an external provider and you're wanting to deliver in curriculum time, more than happy for you guys, knowing that this is a requirement for your application, to flip me an email and I can liaise and set up. We've got a team of 4 Healthy Active Learning team members here at Sport Wellington. So I can kind of link you up with the appropriate one to go in and facilitate that conversation to ensure that that's happening. I guess the final consideration as far as that goes is it just needs to happen with the lead school. So say you're an external provider and are planning to deliver into 5 schools in curriculum time, you just need to select the lead school, and that one conversation just needs to happen with the lead, and then the sign-off happens. And then the other schools just need to co-sign that form. So you don't need to go and have that meeting 5 times with the 5 different schools, just the once, and then sign off from all the other schools. Again, Ken will touch on that a wee bit more in his chat, and happy to take any questions at the end of this regarding that. Distinct application and assessment process for kaupapa Māori. So there is a kaupapa Māori pathway through the application form, or you can tick that in your application form. So far what we've been finding is a lot of applicants have been ticking that, thinking that it might give them another tick box or as a wee bit of an advantage. Just to let you guys know the implications of it. For any applications to tax kaupapa Māori, they are assessed using a Te Whiti Rehua framework, which is a separate framework, and that's led by our external Māori representative on our community decision-making panel. So that process essentially looks at the kaupapa Māori applications and assesses them on 5 criteria that help determine as Māori participation. So just be aware of that if you're ticking that. Ideally, that is an actual Māori organisation that delivers in Te Reo at least, or a mix of Te Reo and English. Aim for your initiative to address one of the target groups if possible. Again, we reviewed those earlier, so I won't touch on those too much, but as much as you can kind of align with the target groups, that would be awesome. And that's something that the panel is certainly looking for. Each program or project is required to meet a clearly identified need. And I guess for me, this is probably the biggest part of the application, and something that the panel is looking at really closely. So as this is a community activation fund, organisations wanting to run a particular initiative need to have considered the need of the community or the setting that they're delivering into, and ideally use that to inform what the project looks like. Leonie and George will touch on this a wee bit more shortly, but evidence of local insight or need is really important. So whenever you can go out and discuss the potential opportunity with that group ahead of time and use their feedback or local insight to inform what your program looks like, that's awesome. And then I guess along the same line, your budget should specify what the costs the applicant is seeking for are funding for. So please, when attaching your budget, include your full program budget just so the panel can get a sense of what your program entails, but make it really explicitly clear what you're seeking are funding for, noting that you don't necessarily need to get your whole project funded through to Manawa, but you can if you like. Again, and ideally that budget should be informed by the barriers that you've established previously. Final points, encourage you to make extensive resources available on our website. Again, there's a lot of information up there, and our comms team have done an awesome job of communicating that and putting it all in one spot. So please ensure you're going and reading all of that information there. When applying, ensure that you're including all of your attachments. Again, that's something that's come through in some of the applications thus far. They're forgetting budgets or health and safety or child protection information, and that makes it really hard for the panel to make a fully informed decision on the application. So please ensure you're attaching everything. And last point on there is use me. So as I said before, I'm going to block out next week to take meetings to discuss specifics on applications. If you would like to sit down and discuss that, we're finding applicants that actually talk through their application and ensure they have a sense check and they're on the right track ahead of pressing submit are kind of doing better for the most part. So happy for you guys to meet with me around that. That is all from me thus far. What I might do is we'll pass it on to Leonie and George now, and then towards the end we can take any specific questions on anything that I might have covered. So I'll pass on to you guys.
Marina Kotu, thanks for joining us this morning. So I just really wanted to talk to you a little bit around, as part of your application, it's really important from our perspective that you are able to demonstrate evidence of need. So I just wanted to break down a little bit what that might mean. So part of the fund, it's important that you're able to demonstrate one of the priority target communities and how you're going to work with them. So they are people at risk of missing out and those who are less active. So as part of your application, you need to be able to demonstrate how you might be working with one of those communities. As part of your application, I'd really like you to be able to consider that you are champions of the people you work with. You know your communities, so how can you demonstrate what you know and how you're representing them and their interests? There's a couple of different tools you can use to help you with that. Here's a couple of examples of how you might, as part of your application, be able to use some of the evidence, information and knowledge that you already have of those communities that you seek to work with. So for example, you might just ask them, what do they want to do? How do they want to be involved in the program? You could use surveys, interviews, questionnaires, guided conversations. You might look to see how can you involve them in the work that you're doing. You might create a participant advisory group who you can speak with them and use that evidence to show how they're involved in the decision-making process, how do they bring to the table what they are interested in, what their concerns are, what they want to do. You could be creative and create your own tools of how you can generate their feedback to understand what it is that they want to do, their interests and how you represent them. So really that idea of being participant-led is just looking at how can you demonstrate in your application that you represent their needs, their interests, their barriers, their motivations, their experiences, and what it is from their perspective they want to do and why they want to do it. So we're really looking in our applications of not only are we participant-led, so how can you show you are participant-led with some of the evidence you use, but in what way are you showing need? What evidence can you use to support that? So I will always advocate for an insights approach. So having a look at breaking down what is your problem, how do you know this? How do you know that what you're proposing to do will be an appropriate solution for the people you're seeking to work with? What are your assumptions? How do we have some evidence to support that? That might be through programs you're already working with, it might be through national evidence to support that. There's a whole range of different things that you can use to show where your assumptions come from and your decision making. So part of that would be looking at what is your problem, how have you identified this, and gathering evidence. So what evidence do you already use in your decision making? What is your evidence base? It could be looking at national level data. We know some people are less active. How less active are they? What do we know around that? That might support your application. It could be looking at previous programs that you have worked with before of gathering reports, feedback, learnings of how have you implemented that into your new program going forward. It could be looking at other programs in the area. What are they doing? How is that context specific to what you want to do with the target communities you will be working with? Using that as part of your evidence of how have you formed those decisions with the mechanisms and context that you wish to do. You might look at, you have a group that you are intending to work with different organisations in your community because they're all experts in knowing their local area. So you might form a stakeholder feedback group. How can you gather information from each of those of what it is they are doing, how do they know this, what evidence do they hold to bring together. There is no right way of doing it. There's lots of different tools and methods that you can bring into your application to show how you have made your decisions and why you feel that that is the best solution to the problem that you have identified. And it's really looking at that insights approach of once you have identified a problem, once you have gathered evidence to support that problem, how you're then going to go solve it, and looking at how you can bring that evidence into your application to show that need of why you need to work with the people you're proposing to work with. We had a look at giving you an example. So part of the leaflet you have explains some of that in detail and some of the tools that you could use to support with that evidence. You can use one of them, you can use a whole range of them, you can create your own tools. They're just some examples to give you some ideas of what information you already have available that you can bring into your application. This is a hypothetical example. Turns out creating a hypothetical example is much harder than actually creating a real example in real life. So that was an interesting exercise. So as an example, you might have a rock climbing program. So in Wellington, there is perhaps an informal rock climbing group who have identified that their participation base is quite low in women and girls. They're having a look at what members they've generated. Recently, they have had new interest in this area and they have more women and girls taking part. So they want to think, how can we support them? How can we get more people to take part? They are less active, what can we do here? In terms of their evidence, they might go look nationally. What are the figures around rock climbing? Are women and girls less active in rock climbing? Is that assumption, do we know that to be the case? Yes, it is. That's part of our evidence of where we can move forward. As part of understanding how we can help that group, those people might then look to create an advisory group with some of the existing and new participants of women and girls of, we want to know how can we help you. In order to do that, we need to know specifically what are your experiences, what are your barriers, what do you want to do, why aren't you participating so that we can help more people like you. So say they form an advisory group and they work with them to say, well, we want to understand these experiences, tell us what you know, what you're feeling. From that group, the young women and females were able to say, we want some introductory sessions that are our level, we want some female-only instructors, we want female-only taster sessions so that we can come in an evening and we can feel more comfortable because it's a male-dominated sport. I might walk in and be the only female out of 10 people taking part in this rock climbing group. I don't like that. I would like to change that. So how can we as a club improve that experience to bring those people together? And looking from that, we can look at their evidence of what it is that they are experiencing, how we can help them, and then we can look at what's our program. Perhaps we put together an application to then have a go sessions whereby we look at changing the times of those, making them female only, having a female instructor, integrating them into the group and tailoring what is it we're doing in those sessions to best meet their experiences and their individual requirements. We can look at that program and say, what's our outcome? We will increase participation in women, young girls through tailoring that experience of rock climbing to make it appropriate to them. When we look at how do we measure that outcomes, we can look at the attendance of how go sessions, take registers, demographics of has that changed in the club? Have we increased participation? Do we have a bigger range of women and girls who are now joining the club or other clubs in the area that we are working in partnership with? We can look at having a survey, having some interviews, focused conversations around give us some feedback, how did these sessions go? How can we implement that into moving forward in what we're looking at those sessions? We can look at the instructors, speak to them, interviews of what were your experiences, what feedback are you gaining, how can we use that to then bring into our approach and improve our experience going forward. Really hard to do hypothetical examples. You kind of need to have real life evidence because nothing's ever that clear cut. But what this example is trying to demonstrate is to be insights-led is really identifying what is the problem, what evidence do you have to support that problem, how can you involve the people you're working with so that you best represent them, so that you can understand them and understand how to tailor your approach to be appropriate to them. looking at the evidence you already have available. How can we bring that in? How can we test those assumptions? How can we improve our programs? And then using that with that application to kind of show that evidence of need. We're very mindful that you will all have different capacity to undertake this kind of work. You will all have different experiences of what is available to you. And whilst I will always advocate for more program planning, for an insights approach, it doesn't have to be overcomplicated and it doesn't have to be admin intensive. A lot of the time, it might be looking at what do you already have available to you? What are you already collecting to show your impact and your outcomes? It might just be demographics of registrations. It could be those conversations you already have with the people you're working with. How do you tease that out? How do you take that information so that you can show where those decisions are coming from?
Is there anyone that wants to perhaps share what they heard or perhaps what they thought around this question?
From our group, we had a couple of very brief chats about being in the eye of the participant. So are they getting what they need from the experience? Are they having fun? Whatever it might be, and sort of saying there's lots of perspectives on morphology.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. And I think, as Leonie's spoken about in her presentation, gathering a little bit around what they're there for. And I think when we are sort of designing things and perhaps delivering things, it's getting really, really clear on who's the participant, what are we supporting them on, and then how are we designing and delivering the experience. And those are, I think, really three quite nice questions to guide us a little bit. And it's going to be really, really different. So if we've gathered insights, we already know some of this stuff, understanding why they're coming along, what they want to achieve, what their needs are. So I think if we've got that, that's a really good foundation to set up and design out what our experience is going to be and hopefully deliver that quality. With that information, then, we've I guess it's for us to be a bit like a DJ, and we're all delivering things already, all the organisations that we're involved with, but it's working out how we're going to perhaps be, what we need to crank up, turn down exactly to help achieve some of these things up here, these considerations. So around safety, are we providing a really good safe opportunity? And that's not just physical safety, that's potentially the psychological safety as well. Fun, Michelle mentioned that down the back, their group mentioned that fun's a critical thing, so how are we perhaps going to design that? I sense you and I know many of the people in the room, that there's a lot of expertise already in this area, but I hopefully today I've just highlighted a few little things, and I'm surely available to talk a little bit more about that, and Jamie's will be able to put you in touch with me if you want to understand that a little bit more. Cool. All right, thanks, team. And I'll pass on to Pew.
Thanks, Tim. Probably a good segue into my piece. I do want to say just earlier to Jamie's point, he spoke about the supporting application form and give you some context of Healthy Active Learning first. Healthy Active Learning is a team that is working in the primary space at the moment. Okay, so I will talk from a very primary setting. I heard a couple of schools this morning, which I know Darren is working in those schools. He's part of the Healthy Active Learning team. And I want to encourage you, because from our experience of being part of the application panel, there's a clear, well, I'm not going to say success rate, but it's obvious to us that those that have had those conversations with the people, meaning people from Sport Wellington, have had a better understanding of what the application form should be done, or how it should be done. So speaking real briefly in terms of what Jamie said earlier, there's a supporting document that talks about when externals come into schools and providing initiative during the curriculum time. There needs to be a conversation around that, and that supporting document needs to be filled in as well. So we've missed out, some externals have not provided that document, and I know Jamie will touch more on it later on, but keep in mind that supporting document needs to be filled in, needs only one lead person from the school, but you need to have a list of schools on that document too. Outside of curriculum time, it's a different form. There's only one form that needs to be filled in. I hope that kind of makes sense. Tim spoke about quality experiences. So what does quality experiences look like in a school setting? One, we want to see some alignment in terms of what you or external providers will do in a school setting. So what does that mean? That means that you'll need to have that conversation about some alignment of the learning that's taking place in the schools. So what is happening in the schools? Is it based on their values? Is it based on school things? Because we don't want externals coming into that curriculum space and not necessarily touching on what learning is happening in schools at that particular time. There needs to be a link, there needs to be alignment. Okay, so what does that mean? That does not mean that the externals change the content or the delivery of what they're doing in the schools. Okay, the only thing you need to do is align some of the thinking and the questioning with that content. Okay, so if it's on about well-being and you know the school are on a journey of the Tawawha model, focus questions around well-being. Okay, you can teach the skills in your content. Yes, but go back to the theme and the learning. And if it's on well-being, have questions around well-being. If they have focus on one of their school values, and if I take a school value such as respect, focus the questioning, the discussions with the kids on respect. What does that look like? Okay? They will know because they're often taught it explicitly in schools. So get feedback from them. But again, prior to all of that, have those conversations with the schools. Two, if you need more support from Sport Wellington, we've got enough of our workforce, the healthy active learning workforce, to come and support you to have those discussions with the schools. Okay? And it's really important to have those discussions because you're experts in your area, we get that, okay? And we are there to support you to understand what it can look like in the school context if you don't have that much of an understanding behind it. And I'm not saying that you externals don't have any understanding of school settings, of course you do. But you might need some alignment that may help with your application form. Okay?
I have a slide, so there's a summary. So as you've heard possibly in the introduction, I'm the General Manager here in the partnership space and the chair the open panel for funding applications. So Jamie's your absolute direct link into it, and then I sort of support the conversations that happen in the room. So I thought I'd tell you a few stories because it was the stories that actually were the successful applications in the room. So I'm going to tell you a story about basketball, who came and they, in their need assessment, they had 5 quotes. A couple from kids who said, I really love the experience I have of basketball with this group. It's less about drills, we have lots of fun, I get to work on my game. I get up at 5:30 in the morning to walk because it's a before school activity. I feel so much safer now that the coaches come and pick me up. A conversation from parents saying, my kids have got a lot out of this, they come home buzzing, they're out being active after the sessions and really want to come back. So a really cool story about the experience of basketball. And the project was about expanding what the opportunity was, and the money they were asking for was to fund transport costs to get school kids to the activity. So you could absolutely see that need expressed by the people who are participating, understand that they want to do more with these kids and grow it, and they didn't have the capacity, and one of the key barriers they were facing was covering the transport costs. So a really simple, nice, local community kind of experience. Another story we got told was in the Wairarapa, and this is 5 RSOs, regional sports organisations, work together to deliver a project called Kia Ha Kina Kina in primary schools in the Wairarapa. They've done it for a couple of years, and what they're looking to do is expand into more schools. And the story that they told us was that they used the in-school kura form, discussion questions, but what they provided was actually not just signed forms. They had letters from principals saying about how it was, or lead teachers, about how what the external providers were providing in curriculum time aligned with their PE, health and PE curriculum, and that the outcomes around the events and the opportunities for all to come and participate were really critical to their school environment. So it gave us real comfort that funding in curriculum time wasn't displacing the role of the teacher. Another really cool example that we saw was a group who, they work in youth development, and they work with rangatahi, and they work with some of our most deprived rangatahi. They have great success in securing funding for their youth development work, but the young people were telling them that what they wanted to do was participate in sport opportunities, or that they have a range of opportunities and active recreation that they'd like to do. But they just couldn't find funding for it. It's like, yay, we fund this stuff. They told us that they had 70 kids ready to go for summer tag rugby, but they had to pay for registration fees and uniform costs in kind to make that happen. We can fund all of that. We understand that the barrier's there. They've rolled out and they've started participating in summer tag rugby. The other opportunity was 20 weeks of a range of activities with a range of providers coming in for young people who've been outside of the school environment for a significant period of time, so don't get the opportunity to participate as other rangatahi do. So that was a really cool story wrapped together. So it's that kind of thing that we want to see. There's lots of ways you can tell us the story. You can use big data and take it local and say, we believe this holds true here. But we are oversubscribed for funds. So the stories that work best are the ones that tell us about our local communities in the Greater Wellington region. It's great that something might happen and work really well in Auckland, but we just want some security that when we're allocating the money that you know that it's also going to work in Wellington. Finally, I'd like to say that we are currently going pretty well with our play, active recreation and sport splits, but we're kind of really monitoring that hard. So particularly sport, there is a lot of pressure on us to only fund good applications for sport because it's where we're largely overprescribed. We are really standing by those 3 funding rounds, as Janie mentioned at the start. So we are looking to make sure that a third of the funding goes out in that first round, a third-ish in the second, and a third in the third funding round. Because we know that different providers are going to be ready at different times. Some people want to do it for a school year, so that's kind of what this funding is about in the next 12 months. We had some people applying early for summer code work, term 4 work in the first round, and in the last one we know and we're hopeful to keep money available for those that like to work across the winter period. So we are holding true to that. Please don't rush and feel like it's a first in, first served. We are monitoring it really closely.
Awesome, thank you, Michelle. So the last few bits from me are all up on the slide. So just a reminder that both the open funding round and this month's fast funding round close on November 30th. If you would like to book at a time, again I've touched on this a few times already, but if you would like to book the time next week to discuss specifics of your application ahead of submitting it, please pop up to the front and see me after this and we can organise a time. And thank you for attending, appreciate it's early, but hopefully this has assisted you in the quality of your applications moving forward.